Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for taking the time to meet with us today. My name is Tiffany Esposito. I'm the president and CEO of the Bonita Springs Area Chamber of Commerce, and we are the Southwest Florida Alliance of Chambers. We are interviewing all of our candidates for the upcoming election, and we are recording the interview and we'll be posting it on our website. A little bit about the group. We represent 7 chambers of commerce in Lee and Collier County, and about 6,000 businesses and 300,000 residents. So we will do brief introductions before we get started, and then we have a handful of questions for you. We're asking all of the candidates the same questions in the same order. So again, thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Tiffany. Appreciate it.
John, Dave, Donna, Colleen, you guys want to kick us off?
You got it. Good morning. Thanks for joining us today. My name is John Lai. I'm the president and CEO of the Sanibel and Captiva Chamber of Commerce.
Hey, John.
Thanks.
Good morning, Dan. My name is David Miller. I'm with the Chamber of Southwest Florida.
David, good to meet you.
Good morning. I'm Donna Germain. I'm the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of Cape Coral.
Hey, Donna.
Good morning. I'm Colleen with the Greater Fort Myers Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, Colleen.
And Michael, Jackie, and Jenna?
Michael Dolby, the president and CEO of the Greater Naples Chamber of Commerce.
Michael, good to meet you.
Good morning, Dan. Jackie Lezak, President, Executive Director of the Fort Myers Beach Chamber of Commerce.
Awesome. Good to meet you, Jackie.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, Jenna Bazzacco Forrester I'm the Director of Government Relations at the Greater Naples Chamber.
Good to meet you, Jackie.
Fantastic.
Good morning. My name is Chris Lopez. I'm a member of many of the chambers here, and I consult with the Southwest Florida Alliance of Chambers.
Hey, Chris, you're dark.
Just for a few minutes. I'm sorry.
Well, Dan, if you want to go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, just a little background. I'm a 22-year Navy naval officer, retired in 2000. Flew Navy F-18s, A-7s, a Top Gun fighter, got Top Gun qualified, flew off the USS Midway. I've been Far East, lived a lot of different places, spent a lot of time in California, but in Washington, D.C. As well. And in 2000, I retired from the Navy, had a great career, enjoyed it, actually spent 3 years in Washington, D.C. doing plans and policy briefing, the second nav and chief of naval operations. After I retired, I was looking at going into the airlines, obviously as a pilot, and 9/11 hit and the whole airline industry tanked. I got approached by a Speaker of the House of Minnesota. We had moved back to Minnesota because that's where our family had been before. We were residents for 21 years in Florida while the time we were in the military and voting out of Florida that entire time. I got back to Minnesota, got asked by the Speaker of the House to run for the Minnesota legislature, got elected in 2002, served from 2003 to 2011, and served 4 years in the majority and then 4 years in the minority. 4 of those years in the minority is in the executive positions, and then was the minority whip in the last session. I had gotten approached by some people about some voter fraud, ended up doing an investigation, ended up running for Secretary of State from 2010 and then 2014 as well. Last race we lost by 1 percentage point, and prayed about it. The Lord allowed us to leave Minnesota. We came down here, kind of what this was to us was home, and moved into the Cape Coral area in 2015. So we've been down here integrating into the community and loving it. We just love Southern Florida.
Great. So you touched on it a bit, and obviously you have some experience, but what prompted you to run for this office?
I wasn't particularly in that mode. We had served our country in terms of being in the military and then in the legislature in Minnesota. But when Francis Rooney sponsored the carbon bill, the carbon tax bill, that was kind of the first thing that caught my attention, because that is not a business friendly. It is not to me, it's a large Ponzi scheme. And so this is a very conservative district, plus 16 to plus 18 red, conservative. And so I started to watch his votes and watch his positions on issues. And to me, he was not representing the voice of this district. And so as I did that, and I think the final straw was when he came out, not necessarily in opposition of the investigation into Trump and the the impeachment process. And that was kind of like when everybody just goes, this guy isn't conservative. And at that point, I felt like I have the background in terms of the military and the legislative that I would offer that up to the people of the district and see if I could win their confidence.
Thank you. What makes you qualified to represent the business community?
You know, when I was in Minnesota, served those 8 years, I was on different committees. I was on transportation, housing, public health, finance, commerce, a lot of different ones. I got a good exposure in terms of the business community. I was always endorsed by NFIB, National Federation of Independent Businesses, when I was in the legislature. And so to me, I'm a big believer in less taxes, less regulation. And so when I was the minority whip, the Democrats had tried to push through a $3.2 billion tax increase. And we knew that was going to be crushing on our businesses in Minnesota. And we had a 3-vote margin in the House at that point to sustain the governor's veto. And we did it. It was the 10th hour and the place was raucous. They thought they had the votes to make up some of our people turn. I was the whip. I was able to sustain that. And we won the day on that one. And it was interesting because as a result of that, our constituents, the people that believed in conservative government and business, came out to the polls the next election cycle and basically took over the House and the Senate for the first time in 50 years. So it was one of those things that we just felt really good about preserving business, about making it a business-friendly environment. And so when I was in the legislature, that's one of the big pushes that we as a caucus and I as the whip were working on, is making Minnesota more business-friendly. Unfortunately, it seemed to be burning them out here recently.
Thank you. In your opinion, what's the most pressing issue facing the Southwest Florida business community? And if elected, what will you do to address the issue?
I think probably one of the foremost is the water quality. I think tourism is a large portion of our industry here. People come here because it's paradise, and it's an awesome place to live, and it's an awesome place to come and visit. So to me, one of the number one and top priorities in Washington is going to be to get continued funding, which Francis Rooney was good at. He did that, but I think we can do better. I think we can also work on creating more of a magnet for technologies here. I've talked about in the past the Everglades Airport, and in terms of developing that area there, it's not in our district, but I think a lot of our constituency could benefit from an operation like that, where it would turn into a larger distribution center. I know there's a lot of area to develop around the Cape Coral, Fort Myers, and south for businesses. And so part of my job would be to attract that business to come here and put in their factories and put in their technologies is really what I think we need to see. Because new technologies are environmentally challenging, but have the ability to pull in some of our people from our colleges and give them meaningful employment locally here.
Thank you. So as you know, Southwest Florida's economy is heavily dependent on leisure and hospitality. If elected, what would you do to encourage economic diversification in the region?
And just as I was saying, the whole diversification, it needs to go, beyond manufacturing into the technology side. Over on the East Coast, we've got a lot of the aerospace engineer. I think we can migrate some of that over here, and I think there's other opportunities in terms of, this is the perfect place to do research and development for marine life, and the estuaries are really our lifeblood locally here. So I think there should be more of an emphasis on that kind of an environment where we encourage the economic development around that clean water. And so some of those resources in terms of water purification, some of those issues would be some issues I'd like to look at. People love living here. It's become more of a displaced society where you can work remotely. So I think some of those things are also important to promote here in Southwest Florida.
Thank you. So you mentioned it a few times, and this group was formed in the wake of the 2018 water crisis. And water quality is our #1 priority and will be our #1 priority. So if elected, what specific projects would you advocate for to improve and protect Southwest Florida's water quality?
Well, we need to continue to fund the comprehensive Everglades restoration program and to fund that to make sure it's taking place. But I think on the state level, there are things that should have been done that haven't been done. Case in point would be in this last legislative session where we're talking about water runoff into the Kissimmee Basin and the agricultural runoff, which is a huge problem. That's where a lot of the phosphorus load is coming from. It goes into Okeechobee and then creates the blue-green algae. That instead of doing mandates and periodic mandatory inspections on those was changed from a shall to a may. And so what we really have done is we've thrown money at it, but we haven't put in the hardcore requirements to say, okay, are we meeting those goals? Are we meeting those goal points that we have set in our plan so that we know whether we're improving or not improving? So when this was initially put into place in 2001, you do a graph of where the target was supposed to be all the way up to 2015. There hasn't been one point where we have met that goal. That's a problem, especially with all the money that we've thrown at it and we're still not seeing it. Now, there's some water reclamation areas south of the lake that are helping, but the water index is still too high to allow that south flow to go down to the Everglades estuary down there. So we've got to do better in terms of cleaning up, in my estimation, the Kissimmee River Basin, and that goes not just to the agriculture, but it also goes to the septic systems, because Orlando is a growing area, and with the septic failure rate that's been going on up there, it's going to be problematic in the future, even if we do start to fix some of these agricultural areas. So yes, it's a big deal.
Thank you. So just two more questions. What specific actions do you think lawmakers should take to improve and protect Southwest Florida's waterways?
Well, again, I think at the state level, it's going to take some iron will. You know, I talked to a few of the legislators, and they understand the issue. It's just, do they have the political will to do it? And so from the federal standpoint, I think we can continue, and I think President Trump has shown his support in this whole process by actually funding what the federal government said they were going to fund. But from the state level, I think we need to have more of an open dialogue, and that would be with the other congressional members from the East Coast as well, to say, how do we develop that coalition? How do we actually make this thing happen? And so, and for me, it's getting on the Energy and Environment Committee. That will be one of the committees that I will put in for, to ensure that we have that access to that infrastructure, that knowledge, and the legal standing to be able to put into law and put into some of our funding documents those needs for that we need from the federal government.
Thank you. So last question, is there anything else you'd like us to know about you or your priorities?
I'm a very conservative candidate. I won't. One of my concerns, and what I've seen in the past here from Southwest Florida, is the rich are definitely in this area. They like to fill the power bucket. The last two representatives we had done that. They're millionaires, billionaires who throw the money at the race, win the race, get down there and realize that they are one of 435 members, that they don't get to call the shots. They don't drive the agenda, that it's a group game. And so when we talk about corporate executives being good legislators, it just doesn't happen. And so the other would be for the legislators that have been in the Florida legislature, have never been in the minority. They've never had to deal across the aisle and make deals, have a dialogue. They've always driven the agenda. I was a minority whip, and when I was in the minority, I worked on issues that were close to me. We reformed veterans status in Minnesota. There were other issues that I worked across the aisle with effectively that we could agree on. So for me, I think the strengths that I bring to the table are, number one, the military, the discipline that goes with that, the heart of public service. And the other is the actual experience in the minority in a legislative area where it's combative. And it's going to be combative in Washington. It's not going to be everyone gets along to go along. You know, you got to have a voice. And that's the other part about this, is I have a history of being that voice. That's why I ran for Secretary of State in 2010, because I saw corruption in our voting system. And instead of just just saying, okay, we'll do this, we'll do that. I stepped up to the plate and ran a statewide race where we lost against the incumbent by 3%, later on lost by 1%. And so I have a proven record of being aggressive, of being a loud voice, and I believe I fit this district perfectly.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today, and we wish you luck in the election.
Thank you so much, and it was great to meet you all. Thanks for the jobs you guys are doing to promote our local businesses. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you,
too.
Dan.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.